I guess I really don't know what Christmas is all about.
Ghost stories from around the world. Malaysia, the Penangle. Once there was a young girl who was bullied by a lot of people in her village. People would often say really mean and terrible things to her, like she had a face that only her mother would love. And that made her bitter and angry, especially towards married or pregnant women. One day when the bullying was especially bad, she finally broke down and went on a rampage, which resulted in the deaths of many pregnant women in her village. She was then obviously caught and brought to justice. The villagers and the families of the victims hung her by a really tall tree, then used a different piece of rope and tied her legs together, then tied the other end of the rope to a bull. When the bull was let go, her body was pulled out, leaving her head and her organs dangling from the tree. And that's how she became a vengeful spirit, who floats around at night trying to find a pregnant woman to be her victim.
Do you guys remember that creepy Beanie Baby urban legend? There was a rumor back in 2014 that was freaking people out all around the world. The rumor was that spider eggs were used to fill these popular Beanie Babies back in the 1990s. And it was said that in 2014, these spider eggs were beginning to hatch. Now, apparently these spider eggs belong to brown recluse spiders, which are horrifying to look at. And all over the world, people were reporting that these brown baby spiders were bursting through the seams of their Beanie Babies everywhere. So people were throwing out their Beanie Babies left, right, and center because obviously they didn't want these spiders to be like hatching all over their bedroom. But thankfully, later on it came out that all this was just a hoax. Because obviously spider eggs can't just lay dormant for over 20 years, that's impossible. But still to this day, I can't look at Beanie Babies the same. I just can't.
La Planchada is a Mexican ghost story of a nurse who is often seen in hospitals. The story takes place in the 1930s and tells the tale of a nurse who took great pride in her job and always made sure her uniform was clean, crisp, and perfectly ironed. She ended up falling in love with one of the doctors at the hospital and they were shortly engaged. The doctor left town to attend a medical seminar and weeks went by where she did not hear from him. Beside herself with worry, she found out that the doctor met another woman while he was away and the two had wed. She was extremely heartbroken and fell into such a deep depression that she started to neglect her own patients. One of her patients ended up passing away as a direct result of her neglect, and she became ill herself. She ended up passing away in the hospital where she worked, and it is reported that when the hospital staff are neglecting their patients, this ghostly nurse cares for them instead. When patients are asked how they seem to miraculously recover, they are reported saying, "A nurse came in and healed me."
The urban legend of Telepo. This story takes place with a poor, starving old man in the woods with his 3 dogs. While he's out hunting for food, he sees this giant creature, which he ends up shooting at, thinking that it will provide a lot of food for him and his 3 dogs. The creature then starts demonically screaming before it runs away back into the woods. The man then proceeds to go over and pick up its tail that he had shot off and decides to make it into a stew and eat it for dinner. Later that night, when the man is off drifting to sleep, he hears a rustling and a clawing noise around him, looking up to find that the creature is sitting right at the end of his bed, demanding the return of its Telepo. The man then calls for his dogs, who come to his aid and chases off the beast into the middle of the night. However, only 2 of the 3 dogs returned. The man then tries to go back to sleep, only to find that Telepo has returned an hour later, demanding with even more force the return of its Telepo. Predictably, the 2 dogs chase the creature away, but only 1 returns. Next part coming in 2 seconds. The final part of the urban legend of Telepo. Now that the 2 dogs are gone, the man is only left with his 1. And as you can probably predict, the same thing happened. The creature came back, which the dog then chased off, and now the man is completely left by himself. Just hours before daybreak, the man hears that same clawing sound one more time. The beast then jumps on top of him, completely ripping him apart. Legend even has it that the beast completely destroyed the house, leaving nothing but the chimney left. Supposedly, if you go into the woods on the darkest of nights, you can still hear the creature whispering for its Telepo. And as for my personal experience, I just remember one time, literally right after hearing this story, I went camping with my family somewhere in California. And I remember just kind of wandering off into the woods by myself, and I came across this huge dugout in the dirt in the middle of the woods, as if a house used to be there. And I swear to God, there was absolutely nothing except for a chimney in that dugout. And I immediately ran back. Comment down below if you have heard this story before, and follow and like for more.
Scariest urban legends from every state. Texas, the Candy Lady. In the 1900s, children in an unnamed rural town began to go missing, and people were blaming it on the Candy Lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on children's window sills, and she would be able to lure them in by leaving notes promising more candy. This story picked up steam when a farmer found rotted teeth on his farm and eventually found the dead body of a boy with candy stuffed in his pocket. While little is known about the origin of this story, many claim that the Candy Lady is real, and her name was Clara Crane. Whichever state gets the most likes, I'll do tomorrow.
The creepiest urban legends from around the world, Part 1. Germany. Meat is murder. It was 1947 during the Hunger Years, and in post-war Berlin, a woman was walking through a crowd when she noticed a blind man with a cane who was struggling. She stopped and offered to help him, and he said he was trying to deliver a letter and asked her to deliver it instead. She agreed since it was on her way, and as she began to walk, she glanced back and noticed that the man was running away down an alley without his cane. She got a bad feeling and took the letter to the police, and when they went to the address, they found there were bags of human flesh, and the letter said, "This is today's serving." The creepiest urban legends from around the world, Part 2. South Korea, the elevator game or ritual, which legend says will take you to another dimension. All you'll need is a building that has at least 10 floors, and to get into the elevator on the first floor alone. Once you're inside, press the 4th floor. Once you get there, don't get out. Press the 2nd. Once you reach the 2nd, press the 6th. Once you're at the 6th, press the 2nd. Once you're at the 2nd, press the 10th. Once you're at the 10th, press the 5th. Once you're at the 5th, a woman will enter. Don't look at her, don't speak to her. She's not human. Press the 1st, and if you start going up to the 10th floor, you've made it. When you get out, the woman will ask, "Where are you going?" Don't answer. You'll know you're there because you'll be the only living thing in this world. But be careful, because it's hard to get back.
Urban Japanese Legends, Part 13. If you don't want to get scared, stop watching and scroll. Akamanto is the spirit of a masked man who waits in women's stall bathrooms. Akamanto translates to red cloak. It is said he is a handsome man who wears a mask and red cloak. He is usually found in the last stall of the women's stall bathrooms. He will say, "Aka kami ga ao kami dochi ga hoshi?" If you say red, you suffer a violent death. If you say blue, you are suffocated until you turn blue and die. The way to avoid being killed is to politely refuse anything he offers.
Today we're talking about the Japanese urban legend called Taketake. Also, this is just the overview of the whole story. There was once a schoolgirl who was said to have fallen onto a railway line. She died by having her body cut in half completely by a train. The spirit of the girl is said to lurk in urban areas of Japan and in train stations at night. Because she was cut in half, her spirit is unable to reconnect her lower half, so she moves only on her hands while dragging her upper body. When she encounters a victim, she chases them down and slices them in half, killing them to resemble her own disfigurement. Today we're talking about Siren Head. Siren Head is a 40-foot figure who usually lurks deep in the woods. As you can see, he has sirens instead of a head. His victims are usually people who travel alone or in small groups. The way he's able to lure his victims is by using his sirens to play noises of people in distress. By doing this, the victims go towards the sound and get consumed by Siren Head. Their screams and cries for help become a part of Siren Head's next audios for his next victims. Over the years, there have been many sightings of Siren Head. But also, I just want to let you guys know that these are urban legends, and urban legends are ultimately not true. They're just stories that people make in order to provoke fear.
Urban legends that will haunt you. The dead boyfriend. A girl and her boyfriend were making out in his car in the middle of the woods so that way no one could see them. When they were done, the boy got out to go pee while the girl safely waited in the car. After waiting for 5 minutes, the girl got out of her car to go search for her boyfriend, but then she saw a shadow and returned to the car. Once back in the car, she started to hear a very faint squeak, squeak, squeak. This continued for a few more seconds until she got so scared she had to drive off. She hits the gas as hard as she could, but the car doesn't go anywhere because there's a rope tied from the bumper to a tree. She slams on the gas again, but then hears a loud scream. She gets out of the car and realizes that her boyfriend is hanging from the tree. and the squeaky noises were his shoes slightly scraping the roof of the car.